We've all heard about burnout, but what is it really? And could you have it? Find out on this episode of the Radiate Wellness Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast with your host, metaphysician, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist, Christi Clemens Hoffman. Each week, we will discover teachings, tips, and tools to radiate your best life ever with practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate?
Hello and welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today, we radiate impact with Elizabeth Gaines, who is the Director of Education at Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, or FDN, where she oversees curriculum, live training, and mentor development for one of the world's leading functional health certification programs. Her path to FDN began not in science, but in survival. After years in nonprofit trauma recovery, supporting victims of domestic minor sex trafficking, Elizabeth experienced severe burnout and chronic illness. Conventional medicine told her it was all in her head. Through FDN, she discovered how to uncover hidden healing opportunities on lab tests, reclaiming her energy, clarity, and joy. Today, she teaches with a rare blend of personal story, scientific insight, and systems thinking, guiding both audiences and practitioners toward sustainable healing. Now, I am your host, Christi Clemens Hoffman, and I tell you, with this interview, this discussion I had with Elizabeth, and it's been a couple of months, I learned so much. And I realized, oh my gosh, I think I may be, experiencing some burnout in some areas. And talking with other people in the area and other people who do the type of things I do, that burnout is really pretty prevalent. Even for women, I think it's pretty prevalent because we do so much and we take on so many hats, right? So I think that burnout doesn't have to be inevitable, but I think for many of us it is. So if you resonate with this message and if you learn something from this interview, please share this episode with your circle, like all the people that you know, coworkers, friends, family, etc. In fact, share the entire series, the Radiate Wellness Podcast in general, with your circle, because the more people know this type of information, I think the better off we all are. So please do share this content. Also, if you would, please subscribe or follow right now, wherever you're listening, whatever platform you're on, there is a way to get notified when new episodes drop. We drop a new episode every other week. So you'll definitely want to get those notifications. And then if you would, if you're able, if you are so inclined, please give us a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, a little review, just telling everybody how much you appreciate this content we bring you. That would be so wonderful. And then if you haven't checked it out, please check out my other podcast, which is Real Life Angel Encounters. It's real people just like you sharing their miraculous events. In fact, there's a book out of the same name, Real Life Angel Encounters. So check that out wherever books are sold online, hopefully even in your local bookstore. That'd be awesome. But yes, please listen, tune in, and share with your friends. If you're feeling particularly generous, there's also a donation link in the show notes. I am dedicated to providing this show and this content for free to our listeners, and that will never change. But, we have costs associated with this. There's hosting costs and editing costs and art costs and all of that. It just, there's costs associated with everything. So it would really be nice. It would help if you just floated a couple bucks my way to just help defray some of the costs. All right. Well, without further ado, please welcome Elizabeth Gaines, my guest in this episode, and do enjoy. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you for radiating impact with me today. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, is the subject of burnout. Now, you approach burnout from kind of a scientific background. And why don't you let us know, how do you radiate impact with burnout?
That's a great question. So I wanted to radiate impact today because that is what is robbed from us when we are in burnout. We are in survival mode. We're just trying to get through our everyday, and there's no way that we can inhabit and fully present the impact that we are meant to have in the world. Like, each of us has a piece. Each of us has a universal seed that we are supposed to cherish and nurture and grow into what is part of the collective. So we each have a piece. And when I am barely able to get up and get through my day, my piece is missing and the world is not complete. My personal impact is missing and the collective impact is missing. So this is why burnout is really near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, when were you first aware of what burnout even was? Do you have a personal connection?
Oh, I do have a personal
I
connection to
figured you
burnout.
would.
Yes. So I did not start off as a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. I actually had no background in health at all. I was always interested in health and I was always interested in science, but I did not have a background in it. And I came to FDN after working for a decade with domestic minor sex trafficking victims in Harlem and having like really poor boundaries where that was concerned. I
Easy
think
to
that,
do.
yeah, it's very easy to do. And I think, when I am being honest with myself, what that came down to was I needed to be needed in order to like the person that I saw in the mirror every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so if they called me at 3 a.m., I was there. If they needed me to store money for them, I did, cross all of these lines of taking care of myself and, keeping it sort of a professional relationship, because at the end of the day, I needed to be needed in order to see myself as a worthy person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, boundaries, it's a great way to get depleted.
Absolutely. And so sort of working in that environment, every phone call is life or death. Every situation is of maximal importance. Everything is turned up to 11. There is no wandering into the office to talk about your day. Maybe there's a little bit of that, but most of it is like a 5-alarm fire all the time. And because I didn't have good boundaries and because I needed to be in the fray to feel the impact that I was having on the world, to feel like I was giving back enough, then I was there in all of it. And I think another underlying assumption of that I want to really highlight for your audience, because I think all of us have inherited a version of this, is that we are somehow, some way trying to pay back the gift of our life with our labor.
Okay, let me parse that out a bit. Pay back the gift of our life with our labor. Right. Okay, that seems very out of balance.
Indeed, because we can never pay that back, no matter how much we work, right? So if we're in that paradigm, we're never going to stop working. We're never going to have done enough.
Yes, absolutely. So physiologically, what happens when we're in burnout?
So it's got stages like everything else. And so what starts to happen is I think of our bodies as having a bank account. And so when the bank account is full, you can go and do high stress things and the body can cover the cost of that. But if we're doing high stress things day after day after day after day, and we're not resting and we're not eating well and we're not exercising and we're not, reducing stress in other areas as we can, then we start overspending. And then we are in debt. And then when we're in debt, the body stops being able to cover the expenses of this. And that's where we start to feel the symptoms. And so the first symptoms that come on, they're very quiet. So it's like, well, I'm having some trouble concentrating, or I'm gaining a little bit of weight, or I'm having trouble sleeping at night. I just am not as happy as I used to be. I don't have sort of the capacity for joy that I once had, or the capacity for presence. And, my joints hurt, or I get headaches all the time, whatever it is. And I think when that starts to happen, we look into the zeitgeist, and the zeitgeist says, well, it's a normal part of aging. You're just aging.
Right.
Yeah. But actually, these are the first signs coming from the body's bank account that it is getting low and that we need to pay attention there. So you go to the doctor and the doctor says, I don't see anything wrong with you. And so for me, I kind of sat at this intersection of like, am I really sick or do I just hate my life? And I sat there for a long, long time.
I love that. Am I really sick or do I just hate my life? Okay.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us get there in our 30s and our 40s. And that's when we start getting antidepressants and told that we're depressed and all of these things. when really it's just our body's vital reserve that's starting to get low. That bank account just can't cover the daily expenses anymore. And so when we are told like, oh, it's nothing, or you just need an antidepressant, or it's not physical, it's in your head or whatever, we just keep going. And then for me, it started to just get worse and worse and worse, and got to a point where I actually couldn't be out of bed for longer than 3 or 4 hours in a day.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm sort of watching my friends live their lives. Like they're all out of CrossFit and they're crushing it and they're dating and they're meeting their partners and they're advancing at work. And I'm just watching my life go by. And I'm realizing that because I sort of look okay and I sound okay, that my friends don't really get it. And so they're like, well, you're just not as fun as you used to be. And you just fall off of their radar. And now you're isolated in this world of like, I am sick with this thing that has no name. And everyone else is on the other side of this wall and they are living their lives. And it's a very lonely place to be.
Very lonely place to be. So why were all of your labs coming back?
Normal?
Right?
Great question. Yes. So this is part of what I learned when I came to FDN, which was my last stop on the train. I was definitely in the cycle of trial and error, being like, okay, well, if there's nothing physically wrong, I got to go outside of standard medicine. And so I was trying everything. I was trying like the supplement that worked for my friend or the diet that worked for this person, or listening to all the podcasts and feeling like, oh, I have adrenal fatigue. Let me do all the things for that. And nothing was working. Nothing was working well enough or long enough. And so when I got to functional diagnostic nutrition, I realized that there's a difference between alternative wellness, functional wellness, and standard medicine. And this is the answer about the labs that I really want to highlight here, is that when you go to the doctor is trained for disease. They're trained for catastrophic intervention. Right. So it has to have a name. It has to meet some diagnostic criteria. And then it has to have an insurance code. And then there is a standard of care that goes along with all of that. So they are running a diagnostic test and they're looking for disease on either side of that range of diagnosis.
They're looking for specific diseases.
They're looking for specific diseases. Yeah, because they can't do anything with, I'm not sleeping at night, other than give you a pill. Right. But a lot of us, the quagmire that we find ourselves in is that a lot of us are in this gray space between like, I'm not well, but I'm not technically sick. And doctors are completely not trained for this gray space. They don't understand it because it doesn't come with the diagnosis. This is where functional labs enter the equation. Functional labs, and I know the word functional can mean a million things out there. So I want to take some time to really unpack this because this is an important point. Functional labs do not ask the question, what disease do you have? Instead, they ask the question, where has function been lost in your body and by how much?
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. So entirely different question.
Right. So how is that measured then?
So for me, we looked at cortisol. We measure cortisol 4 times in a day because we recognize that cortisol is supposed to have its own sort of a rhythm. And that cortisol is that sort of stress hormone. So if you've been under stress for a long period of time, chances are you're not making enough of it, or you're not making it at the right times, or for some reason it's like going way up at night and that's why you can't sleep and it's really low in the morning and that's why you feel crappy trying to wake up. And that's the first thing to establish. The second really important thing is sex hormones. When they are low, that is like the canary in the coal mine that the bank account doesn't have enough money. Because the sex hormones are there to help you reproduce. And so if your body is not feeling safe enough to reproduce or not feeling well enough resourced to reproduce, it cuts the sex hormones. And when that happens, the sex hormones, yes, they're there for reproduction, but they're also there to give you ambition. That's where your motivation comes from. That's where you're like, I'm going to go out and crush it today, is coming from your sex hormones. The ability to really be present with people in your lives is because you feel good and your sex hormones are robust and abundant. And so you really lose a certain joy for life when those sex hormones start to flag. Is it a disease? No, it isn't. But it is that sort of early warning signal that the body does not feel like it has enough resource. We also look at digestion, detoxification, oxidative stress, immune system. We look at food sensitivities because a lot of times we think we're eating healthy, But our body, for whatever reason, has tagged that food as a problem and is now spending money out of the immune bank every time you put it in your mouth. So if I was reactive to chicken, for example, that was coming up as a problem for me. And I was having like this joint pain that I was associating with CrossFit. But as soon as chicken went out of my diet for 2 weeks, all the joint pain went away.
Oh,
So sometimes with these food sensitivities, it's not even very hard to relate the symptom back to the food. And it can show up in a lot of different ways.
exactly. Yeah. It can be a masked type of sensitivity that the sensitivity doesn't show up for a day or two.
Totally. And it can show up as a headache or as
Right.
brain fog or as joint pain, or it's so many different things.
Mm-hmm. Right. But it's the body is just saying, okay, I need something different. I don't know what it is, but it's not this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we get from I'm in this stressful environment, I've got crap boundaries, I'm giving way too much of myself to I'm having all of these weird symptoms. Like, what is the connection there?
So the connection is that physiologically, we are made to endure huge amounts of stress. That's how we lived through these crazy caveman days
Right. True.
up to here. Like we can handle large amounts of stress, but two conditions have to be met in order for us to handle large amounts of stress. One, it can't last for very long. And two, it has to be occasional. Now, when you and everybody that's out there listening thinks about the stress in your life, I'm sure it's big. Is it short-lived?
Yeah.
Is it occasional?
Yeah.
No. And so this is where we're spending massive amounts of our healing potential is actually just to get through the day because we're carrying too much stress.
Mm-hmm.
So the body is attuned to say, okay, the external world is the bigger problem than the internal world. So the second you get that stress signal from the body, like traffic, fight with your children or a spouse, worrying about money, deadlines at work, don't like your job, all of these things, this is interpreted by the brain as external stress. And the brain says, all right, I got some cortisol for you. Let's do this. And then everybody else in the body, all of your systems say, let me step back until we get this figured out. And so they stop running at 100% because they think, they're programmed to think the stressor is going to be short-lived and then we'll have time before the next one where we can get fully back online, get things running again. But in the modern world where we have all of these stressors, poor boundaries, this job that was taking up everything that I had, all of the stress from the stories that I was hearing and from their lives and all of that I'm dealing with and juggling and trying to manage means that I'm spending everything in my bank account on getting through the day. And that's when these symptoms start arising to give me early warning that I need to put money in the bank. But we all learn to ignore that. Like, oh, a headache? Let me just take some Excedrin. Oh, brain fog? Let me just drink some more coffee. Oh, I can't sleep at night? Let me have a glass of wine. So we start sort of self-medicating through these symptoms instead of listening to them. And then the bank account is further ticking down and ticking down and ticking down until we get into some serious dysfunction like what I had with chronic fatigue.
Okay. So how did you find this key component, the functional diagnostic nutrition? How did that come about for you?
Yeah, it was clear to me that I needed a new career. So I was like, all right, what can I do? And so, had always been interested in science and health, and I was doing deep dives into health, trying to figure out my own issues and get back to being able to be functional and impactful in my own life. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about impact today, is because when you're lying in that bed, you have nothing to offer. And that is one of the worst feelings, when you know you have a mission in the world, when you know you have things that you can do and accomplish and be and give, and you can't. So like burnout and impact are natural enemies of each other. So I'm looking around I'm in this cycle of trial and error that I'm sure all of you who are working on your health and have sort of mystery symptoms are familiar with, where you're listening to podcasts and you're like, I'm just going to try the thing and I'm going to do the diet and I'm going to buy the gadget and I'm going to get the supplement. And it either works for a short time or it doesn't work well enough, or it makes you worse and it just goes in the drawer with all the other things. And so I'm sort of looking around and I went to a health conference where all of the health coaching programs were lined up next to each other. And I could look at what they offered and talk to their graduates and really make an informed choice in that way. It was such a blessing. And what I was finding is that other health coaching programs were teaching their graduates about motivational interviewing and how to keep people compliant and how to figure out their why and all of that, which was fine. But like, I just come from this nonprofit world where I was doing a lot of motivational interviewing and that type of thing. And then I found FDN that was like, learn how to interpret functional labs and write your own protocols. And I said, yeah, that's the one for me.
Right. Now, of course, FDN, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, is the organization founded by Reed Davis.
Yes.
Yes. Reed Davis and I collaborated on a book a few years ago. It became an international bestseller, The Gap. It's all about, kind of alternative ways to measure and diagnose health and to recover from most common chronic diseases. This FDN school, this is something that, like, how many people have gone through it? It sounds like it's a really big school.
Yeah. Reed first put the training online in 2008. So we've been around for a long time now. And we have about 4,000 people that have gone through the course and around 1,500 active practitioners.
That's quite a few.
It's amazing. We've got FDNs in several countries, and we've got FDNs now working in chiropractic offices and at doctors' offices and attached to medical spas and things like that. And then, of course, FDNs running their own practices.
And how long have you been doing this?
I went through the course in 2019.
Okay. So, yeah, you've been doing this quite some time.
Indeed, yes.
So what can you do with this degree, this certification in FDN?
Yep. So I first want to talk about why FDN works where other health coaching programs might not work so well. So normally when you go to the doctor, you're like, I got these symptoms. And the doctor's like, great, we're going to run a test based on the symptom. And then you're either going to find something or not find something. And then the doctor's going to say, well, let me just give you like a pill to bust through that symptom because I don't know what's wrong. And so the functional world has somewhat adopted this method, whether they know it or not. So you go to the health coach and you say, I got these symptoms. And the health coach is going to run a lab based on that symptom, maybe not if they're not a health coach that can run a lab, but they're going to just have general recommendations to help alleviate the symptom. They will not be able to look deeper and say what's going on with that. Where is that symptom coming from? And so that's the sort of the first problem with health coaching. The second is that there is this idea out there that you can find the root cause. Like, I'm going to find the root cause. I'm going to get to the root cause. I'm going to run this stool test. There's your parasite. That's your root cause. Well, maybe, except how did the parasite get there? We've been sort of living with parasites for 200,000 years and they don't always take hold. Why is that? Because the terrain was healthy and the parasite couldn't get a toehold, right? So FDN takes the attitude that like, maybe there was an initial root cause, but since then, these things don't stay siloed. It has crashed into every other foundational system. It has caused loss of function in all of these places. And now it doesn't matter what the root cause is. And that's why we do not test based on symptoms. We run the same foundational labs on every single person that walks into FDN or that is one of our clients, because we're not going to get to the root cause. The root cause may not even still be there, but we can get a snapshot of where function has been lost and by how much in all of the foundational systems, and then write protocols to boost that function. That's the difference between FDN and other health coaching programs out there. And that is why we more reliably get results. And it allows a roadmap. Like, you don't have to sit and wonder when somebody comes into your office, what lab do I run? Or like, what protocol do I use? You're going to run all the labs on everybody. And then you'll tailor the protocols to what the labs reveal.
So what are the most important labs to look at? What are the most important indicators of our health?
Yeah. So we look at what we call our hidden foundational systems. And that's going to be hormones, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production and nervous system. So we're going to look at that in every single client to see where has function been lost and by how much.
Okay.
That's not every single healing opportunity in the body, but if we were to test every single healing opportunity in the body, we'd be spending $50,000 on lab work. And the genius of Reed's system, which he developed through a decade of clinical observation, is that he figured out this is generally enough to get 80% of the people back on track to where there's now money in the bank and the body can spend it upstream on things that we didn't measure and don't know about once we correct the imbalances in these foundational systems.
Okay, so say that we find these imbalances in our system. So how do we get back on track? Like, what are the biggest bangs for our buck?
Yeah, great. So we have what we call our DRESS protocol. Reed loves acronyms. He's very good at them. And so the DRESS protocol is diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation.
Okay.
And so we tailor all 5 of those pillars to the person based on their history and based on their lab data. So no 2 DRESS protocols look the same, but that is the roadmap that we're going to use with every single client is diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. I find that a lot of people out there are just working with diet, which is great. You can do that and you can make some progress there, but generally it's not going to be enough. And then a lot of people out there are working with supplementation, but I think supplementation has grown an inflated importance in today's world because it is the closest corollary to a prescription drug, but it isn't a prescription drug. And so a prescription drug is like nature times 10,000. It comes with a lot of chemicals and a lot of additives and a lot of side effects, but generally because it is nature times 10,000, it's powerful enough to bust through the symptom without any other interventions. You don't have to change anything else. You don't have to change your diet. You don't have to change the way that you sleep. You don't have to change anything else when you take the prescription drug. And so people have conflated this with supplementation. They're like, just tell me what to take. Like, yeah, but a supplement is like nature times 10, nature times 20. It's not powerful enough to bust through the symptom without all of these other lifestyle adjustments.
Right. I mean, people want an easy fix, and there really is none. I think the pharmaceutical industry has done us a huge disservice thinking that, oh, you just take this pill and that fixes the problem.
Yeah.
But then
it fixes the symptom, but it didn't fix the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then introduces new side effects and introduces new wrinkles into our health and new ways to deplete our bodies. And then in your protocol, you talked about diet, rest, exercise,
stress reduction, and supplementation. Yeah.
Right. So where in that might be like our mental health, our emotional well-being?
That is stress reduction. So we think of stress reduction in 3 different buckets. We think of it as physical. Like, do I sit too long? Do I drink too much coffee? Do I assault myself with like blue light on my computer screen all day?
Right.
Then there's the mental emotional. What am I doing to take care of my mental health? Like, how do I feel about my job? What is the impact I'm supposed to have in my world? How are my relationships? Am I taking care of elderly parents, or do I have kids with special needs? Like, do I have enough money? You know, all of these types of things go in the mental emotional bucket. And then the third part of stress reduction for us is environmental. Like, what am I putting on my body? What am I cooking in? What am I breathing? Where are my wireless routers located? So that type of thing. So we do a really deep dive on stress reduction.
Oh, no, that's awesome. That's awesome because, so much of what we're going through, the physical stress is some mental and emotional stress too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I recognize as an FDN practitioner that I can't fix your marriage, can't get you out of it, but this is beyond my qualifications. But I cannot lie about the impact that those stressors are having on your body simply because I can't fix those problems.
Right.
And stress is cumulative. So if I can identify all of these tiny stressors around you that are costing pennies out of the bank account, and I can eliminate those, then that's going to add up to real savings, even if we can't in a 90-day protocol get through some of these big stressors like I take care of elderly parents or, I have a child with special needs. We can't change those things, but we can change the air that you're breathing and the water that you're drinking and the chemicals that you're putting on your body and how long you sit in a day. So if we can get enough of the small stressors gone, then that adds up to real savings in the vital reserve bank.
No, it really does. Now, I had heard a statistic, I don't even know if this is true or not, but years ago, and I've always adhered to this, that when we have a stressor in our life or we have a stressful event, then, we've got the stress hormones running through our body, the cortisol, the adrenaline, and then later the cortisol, but that it takes like 24 hours for these stress hormones to cycle through the body. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Well, adrenaline is pretty immediate.
Well, that's immediate, right?
Yeah, adrenaline is pre-made and stored in our adrenals. And that's how we're able to deploy it so fast, is because it's already been made and it's just waiting for this time when you need instant reactivity.
Right.
And then cortisol, it takes about 10 minutes for the brain to signal it and for the body to make it, which is why adrenaline kind of comes in first. But we also have floating cortisol in the body throughout the day, because the body is expecting that we're going to run into stressors when we're awake.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have this sort of floating cortisol around, and the body's hoping to get it done with that. Now, cortisol is active for about 90 minutes before it gets bound up and in line to be excreted. But in terms of like the effect of stress hormones on the body, we are made to go between fight, flight, and rest and repair. The body wants to be able to kind of seamlessly go between those two, because that's what we need to do to meet a dynamic external world. We never know what the external world is going to throw at us. So I got to be prepared to be able to meet any stressor. But once that stressor resolves, then I want to be able to go right back into parasympathetic so I can repair the damage that was done by being stressed.
Okay.
So that's really what the body wants. Now, we are so heavily weighted in today's society towards constant stressors that we now have sort of lost this adaptability to go in between. And so I do think that stress stays with us because it never stops. Like, yeah, you had a stressful event, but now there's a bunch of tiny stressors that you're still worried about. Like, just because I lived through the car accident that I nearly had at that intersection doesn't mean I'm not still worried about the money in my bank account and, the taxes that I'm going to owe at the end of the year, like whatever it is, so it just doesn't stop.
It does not stop. And right. And so when we're stressed every single day, several times a day, our body doesn't get a rest.
It doesn't get a rest. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get a rest. And especially when we are preparing to go to sleep at night, I think a lot of us are like, I'm going to clean the house and I'm going to lay out my clothes for the next day. And I'm going to like do all these things to mentally prepare. But the body thinks that we're still awake and dealing with the external world when that happens. And so then we immediately like go and lie down and we're like, why am I not sleeping? Why can't I sleep? Well, because you didn't tell the body that's what we were doing. You told the body like we're still awake and we need to be dealing with the external world. So you need to have that sort of a wind down time of an hour or so where you're being still, where you're being reflective. Maybe you're reading a book or you're journaling or something of that nature. You're not running around the house doing errands and then getting in bed.
Right. I call that sleep hygiene.
Yeah, that's exactly what we call it, is sleep hygiene. That's a great name for it. Yeah.
Right. You bring the lights down about an hour or so before you go to bed. You turn off the screens. All of these things have proper sleep hygiene. And I'm sure we can extrapolate that into all types of, work hygiene and friend hygiene, all of these things. This is a more comprehensive picture. So maybe this is not a question for today, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, how do we get it so wrong in our modern society? We see doctors and we take pills. How do we get it so wrong?
It's a great question. I think of this, I've spent a lot of time contemplating this, and my personal theory is that it comes from the Industrial Revolution.
I think so too.
Yep, where suddenly we've got machines in our lives, and they're simple machines. They're simple machines in the factories. And so like a gear breaks, it's obvious. You replace the gear. And now we've started to think of ourselves in terms of machine. And you hear that language kind of everywhere about how we are machines and we need to fuel our bodies. And input in is input out. And like, we think of ourselves in these machine terms. And so then we go to the doctor, and this machine thinking has really infiltrated that space too, where they're like, oh, your shoulder hurts? Let's go get a picture of your shoulder. Rather than like, oh, that could be referred pain from your back, or maybe you're having a heart attack, or, something like that. It's the simplest possible term. The gear is broken, fix the gear. Oh, you have pain there? Let's look only there. And so I really do think this is kind of a gift of the Industrial Revolution, but also this sort of like discounting of all knowledge before the Industrial Revolution. So when you were using plants, and when we were using tinctures and drinking teas, and when people were sort of relaxing, now the Industrial Revolution allows us to have lights on until 3 a.m. and it's never dark and things are always open, and producing is the most important thing in our society. Just like produce.
Mm-hmm.
You can sleep when you're dead, that type of attitude. So I think we just really, as far as we could, into this world, and we lost all of the old knowledge that was really protecting our health.
Right. And we had to have legislation and unions to make sure that we had 8 hours of rest.
Right. So like people didn't die at work or lose limbs, or absolutely. Work became the most important thing.
Right. Producing became the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Greed became the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No amount of nutrition or diagnostics is going to fix that.
No.
But if we can at least be aware of our modern life, aware of our modern diet and stress.
Yeah. And again, I think this is where we all sort of have this, well, some of us have an unconscious blueprint about like, I'm trying to earn back my life with my labor. If we can just get aware of that and how we're relating to that, then it becomes easier to relax. It becomes easier to detach. It becomes easier to say like, oh, okay, I can't earn back my life with my labor. So let me just stop trying. Let me just like not work 12 hours a day. And, it just becomes a little bit easier to back off of that once we realize that's the program we're running.
Right. Okay. So I think, we've got a handle on this functional diagnostic nutrition aspect of it. But when we're in the position of going to a traditional doctor that's covered by our traditional insurance,
Mm-hmm.
I know I love my doctor, Dr. Whitler. She's fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
but she doesn't do this stuff.
No, she
Right.
doesn't.
So where do we go to find these types of diagnostic tests and these protocols?
Yep. So let's just be clear on the terminology, because I don't want anyone to be confused.
Thank you.
We do not run diagnostic tests. We are called functional diagnostic because we do a functional diagnostic. Like out of 100% function, what's been lost and where. And so we're using these functional tests to arrive at that. But it's not a diagnosis, and it's not a diagnostic test, just to be clear.
Okay.
And so we all need doctors. Like we need this person who's going to intervene when something goes wrong, because we're going to break a bone. We're going to, something is going to go wrong. You're not going to come to your FDN when you break a bone, or when you like wake up vomiting blood in the middle of the night. You're not going to go to your FDN for that. So the doctor and the FDN, we don't do the same thing. The FDNs, we don't diagnose and we don't treat specific health conditions. So we have neighboring backyards, and we like to wave at each other, the doctors and the FDNs, because I'm saying, hey, let me take off of your plate all of these sort of vague lifestyle symptoms that you can't measure. Like, let me take the fatigue and the weight gain and the acne and, the joint pain. And you deal with the gallbladder disease and the kidney disease and the liver. Like, that's your backyard and this is my backyard. And so we can work together, which we do. But because we are in the functional space where we are not diagnosing and there is no diagnosis, we're not going to be covered by insurance. And I think that can be hard for clients at first until they realize like the diagnostic tests aren't getting them anywhere and they need answers from somewhere. So you can come to Functional Diagnostic Nutrition and look at our practitioner directory if you want to find somebody. A lot of us work virtually, so you won't find the directory by location, but rather by sort of niche, specialty. But you can find a practitioner that way. And you can always write to us and we can then post that on our job board, like somebody's looking for an FDN. So there are a lot of ways to get in touch with FDNs.
Okay. We can do that at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com.
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm looking at the website now, and there's a button, book a call, enroll in the program. But yes, you can absolutely find somebody to.
There's also a practitioner directory on that page. I'm not exactly sure where. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's a bunch of drop-down menus. This is wonderful. Now, and you've got a special gift for our listeners.
We sure do. So if you are interested in the FDN methodology and you really want a deep dive sort of showcase into the nerdiness of the tests that we run and into how they all fit together in a framework, which is what other programs lack, we are giving away our 5 and 5, which is where we take one case and we do one lab each day, and we see how these labs illuminate healing opportunities and show us where function has been lost and where things are out of balance and where we can get things back on track. So it's hours and hours and hours. Like, it's probably, the whole webinar series is probably like 15 hours, but I think they've cut out the Q&A parts and they've just sort of put the lecture parts together. So it's much shorter. And that is the gift that we are giving away.
Yes. So see how FDN practitioners turn lab results into life-changing protocols. This is free case study. That sounds very interesting and very nerdy. But you know what? A lot of people who listen to this podcast like to get into the weeds like that. So we are a very intelligent bunch who listen to this podcast. So this is going to be very life-changing for so many people. Is there anything that we've not gone over that you think would be useful for our audience to know?
I just want to say, coming back to our radiate impact intention, that I don't know what your mission is, all of you out there listening, but I know you have one. And I know that it is on your heart and it is in your consciousness and you think about it all the time. There is a piece that you have that is unique, and the world is not complete without your piece. And the only way to bring that piece to the forefront is to take care of your own health, is to take care of you, is to understand how much you matter in this equation. And so taking care of yourself can sometimes feel selfish. It can feel antithetical. It can feel like, self-care, like, as I get older, my self-care just takes longer and longer and longer. I'm like having to get up at 4 a.m. to get this all done. No, that was a joke, but real. And taking care of yourself is the most important piece to being able to fulfill your impact in this world and to do what it is that you're meant to do. And so I see it all for you. I see who you can be in the world, and I want that for you. So if we can be a part of that at FDN, let us know. If your mission is something else entirely, great. I want you to go out and do it to its fullest, because the world is not complete without you and your contribution.
Wonderful message. Absolutely beautiful message. And I should say that, FDN trains people to do this themselves. And, if anybody's looking for how to make an impact for themselves, their family, and anyone around them, an impact in the world, then they could undergo the training.
Absolutely. And the training actually comes with all of the labs that you learn to run on yourself. You become your first client. And that's how I, discovered my own healing opportunities and really advanced my health in a way that I hadn't for years. And so it is a hands-on application program, and it can help you and it can help everyone around you.
I think that's beautiful. And that's the whole message of radiating impact, radiate wellness, radiate health, radiate anything that we want to radiate. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been very, very interesting.
Awesome. It's been great being here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Don't know what to watch next? Decisions. Well, we've got some suggestions. You can click this little video here and watch that. It's something that we think you're going to like. If you like the last one, you're going to like that one too. You can also click on the subscribe button. And if you do that, then you'll get notifications whenever we have a new video up. Win-win, right?